What's up, guys? Sitting right here on this table is one of my favorite games of all time. How am I going to do this game justice? I mean, just looking at it, there is so much to talk about. Explaining why this game is so fucking good is a monumental task. But today, I'm here to do just that. Lunar, the Silver Star, was a JRPG released for the Sega CD in the early 90s, and for that system, it actually did very well, becoming one of the top-selling games for the Sega CD. So in time for the next generation, Game Arts and Studio Alex would decide to remake the game for the Sega Saturn, and it was later ported over to the PlayStation, featuring English translations from Working Designs. Now, to keep some of you guys happy that have never played this game before, I'm going to break this up into a spoiler and a non-spoiler section. That way, you can still watch some of the review without having all the fun spoiled, and I can still explain to you why you should be playing this game. If I get one person to play Lunar after hearing this review, it'll make my fucking year. That would be so awesome, and I feel like at that point I just succeed as a reviewer. But without further ado, let's pop this bad boy into my Saturn, and PlayStation, and PSP, and let's get started, shall we? The game opens with our protagonist Alex. He stares at a monument to his idol, Dragon Master Dine.
In honor of the great Dragon Master, Dine.
As Dragon Master, he fulfilled his duty of protecting the goddess Athena and her people, but it would ultimately cost him his life. His passing leaves Lunar without a Dragon Master, and Alex aspires to answer that call for a successor. And very soon his desire for adventure is finally met, as the ice blocking the entrance to the White Dragon Cave finally melts.
Hey, Alex! I figured you might be here. Now that the warm weather has melted the ice near the Dragon's Cave, there isn't any time to waste getting started on our big adventure.
Alex teams up with his friend Ramus, Null, this kind of weird-looking flying cat. I don't know what to call him. And finally, there's Luna, who was taken in by Alex's parents at a young age, and the two have since formed a romantic bond. Anyway, together, they set out to claim a dragon diamond from the White Dragon Cave, and Alex hopes to find the White Dragon himself, Quark, and take the first step to becoming the next Dragon Master. Without spoiling anything, their adventure would ultimately evolve into something far greater. With the entire world of Lunar at stake, Alex would be forced to face his destiny, team up with some new allies, and venture into the unknown. And that's it. That's just a basic plot summary of Lunar. Of course, it takes many unique twists along the way. It's not as bare bones as my plot summary makes it out to be. I mean, it's a spoiler-free plot summary. I mean, come on. But to be honest, I will admit that Lunar doesn't really do anything too crazy when it comes to plot ideas. It does follow many tropes of the genre. As you can already tell, it is more of a hero's journey story. It takes that formula and adds some pretty surprising twists onto it. It adds a more positive vibe and elements of course, a love story, which you can, I kind of hinted at that early on between Alex and Luna. Alex is also joined by many different individuals all over the Silver Star, and their group dynamic is just, it's almost unrivaled by any other JRPG in my opinion. These guys are just always communicating and voicing their thoughts. They're all equally important at any point in the story. They get in kind of dumb, funny banter, they bicker and argue, but they know when to get serious and focus on the task at hand. And of course, in the end, they pull through for each other. I just genuinely feel for these characters, and that's because they're all like real people, not pawns to like advance a storyline or robots that trail Alex through dungeons and say nothing. They're likable, down-to-earth characters, which is saying a lot for a game that takes place so far away from our fucking planet that we call Earth here. Alex himself is actually the closest this game gets to a silent protagonist, but honestly for me, that's just his character, and I wouldn't have it any other way. To clarify, the guy does speak, but his entire focus is more so on the quest, and the writing reflects that. When he does speak, it's usually pretty important. You would be hard-pressed to see him partake in just the dumb conversations the rest of the cast has, unless of course he's directly name-dropped. The script in Lunar is just masterful. What this game does is that it takes almost every citizen of every town, and they have a ton of different things to say spread out through the entire game. Like a person you spoke to in a town you have no reason to revisit will just comment on what's currently happening. They probably knew not many people would go back to these places to talk to these just random strangers, but they did it anyway, to make the world more fleshed out and believable. They'll talk directly to Alex or members of his party, and said members will often respond, and it opens up for more of that group dynamic that this game just excels in already. If you're new to Lunar, or maybe you're looking to replay the game, I do recommend talking to many of the NPCs you come across, or maybe you can even go back to some of the previous towns and talk to some people you've already spoken to. Like I said, the dialogue is often new for every NPC after every major plot beat, and some of the optional dialogue not only expands on the world, but it's often really entertaining or funny, or just brings out more of the personality in these characters that are in your party. I've already said this before, but the Lunar we know was a team-up between Game Arts, Studio Alex, and Working Designs. The former two were responsible for pretty much everything about the core story of Lunar, and Working Designs translated it for an American audience.
We pretty much take the main plot points, throw away the rest of it, and write it in an American style with a bunch of cultural references that people can relate to. Even though it's set in this mystical world, you still have these pop cultural references that allow you to get an attachment to the characters.
Working Designs included quite a bit of goofy humor in here, some 90s references like I already showed. Some people don't appreciate that, but I don't quite understand it, to be honest. Some of them, yes, they are a little bit dated, but like I said before, Lunar already goes for a more positive atmosphere, and it doesn't really ever intrude on the core of the story. And in my opinion, it just never gets overbearing. It's not like they're in the middle of a fucking life or death situation and Alex starts making Jerry Seinfeld observational humor. The game knows when to be serious. So we talked about the story, pretty in depth, I will say, but what about the gameplay? Lunar's combat is honestly its worst aspect. Before I kind of rant about it a little bit, let me get the good things out of the way. The movement system is pretty unique. In most RPGs, you press a command, and that's all you have to worry about. But in Lunar, your characters actually move towards a target, and there's actual range to it. Magic attacks are often area-based, so they might not hit every target, so you have to worry about positioning a little bit. Speaking of magic attacks, they are pretty entertaining for a decent portion of the game, but of course by the end, it just starts to get repetitive. And that's really a sum for the entire combat system. It's just very repetitive. There are also many dungeons in Lunar, and some of them are fun to explore or look at. I love the way how Alex and his party just zooms around. They move so fast, man. Some of these dungeons can go on for a little bit too long, but for the most part, the game keeps its story and gameplay pacing mostly in check. They include some pretty decent-sized breaks in between dungeons, which helps keep things fresh. It keeps combat much less repetitive when it's spaced properly. Many of the areas also include pauses midway through, where our characters just kind of interact with themselves or the environment, just all sorts of stuff, which again is a great breather in between the long dungeons. Looking back on the graphics in this game, wow, I'm honestly blown away. By this point, 3D polygons, all those fancy 3D graphics, those were all the rage in the 90s, and to put it lightly, they look like fucking shit. But 2D sprites and pixel art during this time are just absolutely gorgeous. And in my eyes, they look way better than even the modern detailed 3D slop on like the PlayStation 5. This game looks just completely stunning on a CRT. I'm not gonna talk about all that nerd shit like dithering or scan lines. I will post a picture of this game running on my CRT in good old S-Video. Lunar also features a pretty expansive soundtrack. It's pretty pleasant. I like the cheery town themes, there's like rockin' battle music, and more somber emotional themes. It's a pretty good listen when you're just kind of chilling at home or on a walk outside or something. Touching grass, imagine that. What can I say about Luna's boat song? It's possibly the most iconic theme in this game, and for good reason. This is a fucking banger.
Wishing on a dream that seems far off, hoping it will come today. Into the starlit night, foolish dreamers turn their gaze, waiting on a shooting star. But what if that star is not to come?
I know I just played this game this year, but listening to this again just brings back a lot of memories. What a fucking great time this game was, man. As you saw there, for the boat song, this game has voice acting and cutscenes. The FMV cutscenes were very impressive for the time, and they still look pretty great today. Yeah, they do look a little blurry and pixelated at times, but that's just a limitation of the Saturn. There's nothing they could really do to avoid that. They also hired many voice actors to act in these FMV cutscenes.
Hey there, peasants! My name's Nash. I'm a third-year apprentice from the Magic Guild of Vane, renowned for its rich history and tradition. Since this forest is filled with all kinds of terrible traps, just make sure you watch your step, okay?
And the ones I'm showing here aren't actually the original cast for when this game came out back in the 90s. Let me explain a little bit more in detail here. This game never came out in the USA for the Sega Saturn, so you might be wondering, okay, well, how is it in English in this playthrough, right? Well, a fan ported the PS1 Working Designs translation onto this console. However, for some odd reason, they decided to use the voice talent from the remake, Lunar Silver Star Harmony, for the PSP, which I don't know, it doesn't sound as good.
Hey there, kiddies. My name is Nash. I'm a level 3 apprentice from the famous magic city of Vane that floats around the Goddess Tower. The area around the Sea Hag's house can be a little tricky, so be sure to watch your step around here, okay?
Don't get me wrong, the voice actors are fine in the PSP version, and even to my surprise, they got fucking Troy Baker to do the voice of one of the main characters, Galleon. If you don't know, Troy, it was like, I don't know, another 4 years after Silver Star Harmony, he voiced Joel from The Last of Us. Yeah, you heard me right. Joel from The Last of Us is technically in a 90s RPG. I'm gonna be at, like, fucking Walmart, and I'm gonna find out the cashier speaking through the PA is, like, Troy Baker. Like, the guy is fucking everywhere. What's with these Troy Baker jump scares, man? Anyway, he does a good job playing Galleon. You know, he's got a pretty good voice for him, but quite frankly, nobody can beat the original voice actor for Galleon. His name is John Truitt. This guy just straight up is Galleon. Like, he sounds just perfect for Galleon.
Welcome to the Magic Guild of Vane, Alex of Berg. I am Galleon. My apprentice Nash speaks quite highly of you. He said you cleared the trail for the White Dragon. I didn't make it.
The actors for the first one were John Truitt, who's the voice of Galleon, probably the most well-known of all of them.
Anyway, the other voice actors for Silver Star Harmony, they're award-winning too, but it still ends up being a mixed bag compared to the original cast of, well, very inexperienced voice talent. If you watch some of the outtakes for the original cast, you can just see how much fun these guys had voicing their characters, and it shows. Anyway, that's all I'm gonna say about Lunar for the spoiler-free section. To be quite honest with you, I think you have to play this game. It's so good. Like I said, don't be fooled by my basic plot summary. There's a lot to experience in this game, and just way more under the surface. Again, I can't fully do this game justice. You just have to play it. The feeling of adventure, the group dynamic, the romance, it's executed perfectly. It's a game that just embraces its positivity, and it still delivers a purposeful, emotional story. That's it right there. If you're not convinced, I don't know what will convince you. This game is just fucking awesome. But if you're already familiar with Lunar, and you're still sticking around, well, firstly, thanks. I appreciate that. But we're also just getting started. Last warning, we're getting into some spoilers here, so again, you've been warned. Anyway, the group gets their dragon diamond, and they head back to their small village of Berg, but their local shop is just unable to purchase their diamond. It's just worth too much. So they decide to set out to the mainland, to the great city of Maribia. The group experiences many sights while they're in the mainland. Like I said, they visit the biggest city on the Silver Star, Maribia. They also pass a trial and visit the flying city of Vane. And it's here where Alex meets up with a bunch of the 4 heroes that fought with Dragon Master Dine. There's Helmel, governor of Maribia. There's Lamia Ausa, the leader of the Magic Guild of Vane. And Galleon, a powerful magician and Dragon Master Dine's best friend. But Galleon's mind ends up hiding something very sinister underneath the surface. And when the time is right, he reveals himself to be the Magic Emperor. Yeah, I know, the name is stupid.
Not Galleon, dear Quark. Magic Emperor Galleon.
Magic Emperor?
Galleon, no!
No. Galleon, yes!
Anyway, he ends up kidnapping Luna and the White Dragon for mysterious purposes. After nearly killing Alex and Null, Galleon escapes to the frontier far, far away, where the monsters of the Vile tribe banished by the goddess Althena hundreds of years ago, reside, and of course, commanded by Galleon. It's at this point that Alex realizes his destiny is to become the Dragon Master and save Luna. But of course, he's not alone in that quest. He's joined by various individuals around the Silver Star, including Nash, this kind of ego-driven elitist magician from Vane. There's Mia, the socially awkward, rather timid heir to the Magic Guild of Vane. And there's Jessica, a priestess, and the daughter of Hell Mel. But wait, we're missing someone, right? Oh yeah, we need to get fucking Kyle before we set off.
Oh, pardon my heels. What's the world coming to when a decent lady has to be so vulgar to protect herself? And now let's end this cheap charade. You and your boys need to learn some manners, sweet cheeks.
Yeah, this absolute fucking menace to natural order is Kyle. He's the leader of a band of thieves, and also kind of wisecracking, brutally honest type of dude. Absolutely speaks his mind, as you can see. And with him on our side, we set off for the most important journey in the history of Lunar. The journey to become the Dragon Master is the bulk of Lunar, and this is where we get the most amount of character interactions. The team members are banded together. We fight our way through a bunch of dungeons, and of course, assemble the Dragon Master's armor. Our characters grow and change throughout the journey. Jessica and Kyle tried to rebuild their lost relationship as an ex-couple. The supposedly confident Nash, elitist, judgmental Nash, is just unable to confess his love for Mia. And Mia, of course, tries to overcome her lack of confidence as she leaves Vane for the first time. By this point, our main protagonist, Alex, just kind of grows silent. Becoming the Dragon Master just kind of becomes an unwanted destiny for him. And the only thing that truly matters to him now is Luna. But after a long adventure, Alex finally does succeed in becoming the Dragon Master in one of the coolest cutscenes in the entire series. After all this time of just trying to assemble the Dragon Master's armor, once you see it happen, it's so satisfying. It's just, this scene just rocks, man. But our story isn't over yet, as now the group has to travel to the frontier to confront the man himself. As the group gets ready to board their airship and head to the frontier, Nash decides he has different plans in motion, and just straight up betrays the group, destroying the engine to the airship and deciding to side with Galleon. He does this hoping that this would stop the group from going to the frontier and dying out there, specifically towards Mia, who he doesn't want her to throw her life away, instead randomly deciding that Galleon is the best guy to go to. Yeah, let's side with him. His attempt ends up failing, as the airship is eventually repaired. We even end up confronting Nash a little bit later, and a quick smack from Mia brings him back to his senses, realizing that the power and security of joining Galleon is just not worth whatever he has planned for his new world order. Now all that's left is for the group to confront Galleon himself, who waits for them atop the grindery, which is his moving castle. This guy's got a moving castle? Fuck, pimp my ride. Alex and his friends eventually make it on top of the grindery, where Galleon reveals that Luna is actually the reincarnation of the goddess Althena. That seems kinda weird, but let me explain. Althena, realizing that her power only really made people more dependent on her, just decided to spread her energy into the hands of the people and be reborn as a mortal to live with her creation, aka Luna. What a true comrade. Regardless, Luna's memory is wiped by Galleon, and her mind is set to do his bidding. Our boy Alex, he just refuses to accept that, and our heroes challenge Galleon to combat. To say the least, doesn't go too well, and Alex is left unconscious for a few days, with the rest of his team in complete shambles. But Alex is determined, seen this before. This dude, his sole purpose is just saving Luna, so a couple days in bed, unconscious, doesn't faze him. With a little convincing, his team reunites, with the final tool of the Dragon Master unsheathed, the Sword of Althena. The group once again set out for one last duel with Galleon, this time on top of the fortress of Althena. We meet up with Galleon after quite a long trek through the fortress, and he finally reveals his motives. Basically, this guy's ideology is just reliant on the presence of a god or goddess. He believes that the world will just kind of fall into chaos without that leadership, without a god to lead them. And using the energy of Althena's fortress, he just intends to take all that power for himself and become the next god. But Alex and his friends, they are basically the last line of defense against Galleon, and we challenge him to combat again.
What utter nonsense. Perhaps you should demonstrate the power that gives you such confidence. Then we will see who is fit to be supreme ruler and who is dead.
Those that underestimate the power of the human spirit are destined to fail. And that means you, Galleon.
This starts the final boss of Lunar, and I'm gonna be honest, kind of scary boss fight because Galleon's just got magic attacks up the wazoo. He's firing out screen nuking magic spells all over the place and doing loads of damage, and you gotta keep on your toes. Not to mention it's a 45-minute long boss fight just about. But after a long battle, we eventually come out on top. Alex and Luna reunite, and the rest of the group is left to wonder where their future goes from there. Kyle and Jessica put aside their differences and get back together, and of course Nash and Mia have to worry about the Magic Guild of Vane being completely destroyed by the grindery, and so they're working to rebuild it. And we finally end off with Alex and Luna heading back to Berg, and the credits roll, and that's it, that's Lunar. Kind of a basic plot summary. I left out so many details, even though we are in the spoiler section. I want to keep some things in check, you know. I want to make sure if you decided to spoil yourself for some odd reason, that not everything is ruined, you know? And yes, considering this is probably my longest review yet, this is just, I fucking love this game so much. This game's awesome. I adore it. But it's not perfect. I'm gonna give an objective take on this game, alright? Like I said before, combat can be pretty rough, especially the long dungeons like Althena's Fortress. It's just, it gets so repetitive, and by the end, really your only strat is just using all your screen nuking spells and magic power to obliterate enemies before they do anything. And while I love Kyle as a character, to be quite frank, he can be a little bit too goofy at times. Speaking of characters, there's more than one villain in this game, And yeah, I know I just summed up the plot, but Galleon is really the only one that has any value. The side villains are Royce, Phaecia, and Zenobia, just some like witch chicks. I don't know, and they're not very interesting. I guess Phaecia is all right because she goes through an arc, but we just never see her enough to really bond with this person or like relate. So the side villains, they're just very one note. And even Galleon himself isn't a perfect villain. Don't get me wrong, absolutely love this guy. He's such a fucking good villain. But I think most of his character development comes at the very, very end, which I think is kind of a missed opportunity. I think they should have fleshed him out a little bit early on. Before we wrap up with this review, we gotta mention the PSP version, at least a little bit. This is the first version of Lunar that I played, and I just kind of wanted to weigh in what they did right and what they kind of messed up on a little bit. This game starts out with a prologue that we don't see in any of the other versions, featuring Dragon Master dying at the end of his quest. And well, it's a little rough, to be honest with you.
Dragon Master! I hope you haven't forgotten about us.
Watch out! Please move!
Get your fat butt off me!
How rude! My behind is hardly... I am appalled by the language you're using. I shall report this to your wife, Lorena.
Please, I beg you, anything but that!
It's a cool piece of lore, I guess, but the writing is not that great. On top of that, they added some extra scenes in as well to bring in more character development for some of the characters, which is nice, of course. I always appreciate that. They changed around quite a lot of the script, and this was not working designs, by the way. I believe this was Xseed, so it does have a different feel. They didn't change all of the script, but they definitely kind of rearranged a lot of the major plot beats to be worded differently. But to me, Lunar Silver Star Story is the best version of the script. It also features a revamped soundtrack, which sounds really good. I will give the edge to the PSP version on this one. The music is just great on the PSP version. Give this one a listen. I noticed when playing this that the environment seems a little bit more cramped with less room to explore. I know they changed the art style, and the art style does look really good here, but it just feels a little more claustrophobic. Also, if you want to go off screen, or even just enter a house, there's a load screen, and it cuts out the music, which is even worse. It just kind of breaks up the pace of the game, which, of course, the PS1 version did not have. For that alone, I think the original version is just a little bit better to play. Again, like I said, talking to the optional NPCs is one of the best parts of Lunar, but I don't know, going through a load screen for every house you want to enter, it seems a little too tedious. But just overall, it's a great version of the game. It's still worth trying, especially for the prologue and the new story beats added in. That stuff's all great. It's still the same masterpiece, just on the go, and some minor issues, so if you've played the PS1 version and want something new to check out, this one might be it. Man, it's so strange. I entered this franchise with nothing but skepticism. At this point in my life, many of the RPGs sharing its style just never really hooked me. And of course, being the PSP version, the prologue just did not get me on the right foot with Lunar. It's still pretty rough even now. The first hour I don't know, it just didn't really hold my interest, so I put it back on the shelf. But 6 months later, I actually remembered a tweet that I sent out asking if this game was any good, and a lot of my friends were hyping this game up the wazoo, with some saying it's one of the best games they've ever played. I realized I must have missed something, right? So I went back into it, this time with a more open mind, and as you see here, I'm fucking glad I did, man. During my first playthrough, I was staying over at a friend's house, and I decided to bring this game along. You know, it's on the PSP, it's easy to play. Anyway, it's like 1 in the morning, and my friend is just passed out in bed, and I'm just sitting there on his couch, just pitch black darkness, headphones in, and wow, I was just absolutely absorbed in the game. I remember, like, seeing Nash's betrayal at that point, and I'm just sitting there in silence, and the shock is real. I'm like, holy shit, that was crazy. And that sense of adventure I got when we finally traveled into the frontier, it was just, it made me feel like a kid again, which I didn't think would ever happen to me. Like, that sense of adventure is just, I've never felt that since I was a fucking boy. It was that night, which just cemented in my mind that this game was special. But with all that out of the way, it's time to bring this review to a close. It's a long one, my longest one yet, I'm sure. You gotta play this game, guys. You have to. If you made it this far, how are you not convinced? This game is so good. The writing is great, the characters are just unforgettable, and by the end, it just feels like you know these people. And for me, no RPG was able to do that. Alex and Luna have just a great chemistry together, and there's a really good love story buried in this game that I just haven't really talked much about, but it's great. The game decided to give Luna quite a huge spotlight during the first third of this game, so that we get to know her. We get to see how she talks to and treats Alex, and then she's taken away and the main plot is set in motion, but by that point, it's like we really feel for this character. It's like we've had enough time to get to know her. Not only that, but through the entire game, we're just consistently reminded of the person we're fighting for. And you really feel for Alex. I mean, like, my guy just didn't choose this. But by the end, once you see him lighten up, it's one of the best parts of the entire game. It's moments like these that make a game special. But with the connection that you feel with these guys, just the world, the graphics, the music, it just makes for a timeless story that I think every gamer should try, especially if you're into story-based games. And that's why it sits pretty comfortably as my 6th favorite game of all time. With that out of the way, thank you guys. Whoever stuck around this long, I appreciate it. That was my review of Lunar. I hope I did it at least a little bit of justice. And hey, if this convinced you to play the game, that's awesome. But we have to give this game a score, and to be honest, I wanted to go even higher with this one, but an objective rating, especially with some of the problems with the gameplay, I'm gonna give it my personal score of 9.6 out of 10, which, as of reviewing this, is the highest score I've ever given a video game. Of course, it's not my favorite game, but in terms of reviewed games, it definitely holds the top. This game is a fucking masterpiece. I love it. I won't lie, I'm a fanboy for this game, and I think you should try it. I think you should go play it. But this review has gone on long enough. I'll leave it at that. But with that said, I might be taking a little bit of a break from YouTube, just a small one to get my bearings. This is going to be a long video to edit. I'm recording this right now, and the editing is going to be a fucking huge task for me. But with that said, I'm not going to go into detail about that. The review is so long already. I just have to go, alright? But hey, I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you guys hopefully pretty soon, alright? Take care.